Kenny Veach wasn't your typical adventurer. He didn't have a film crew or fancy sponsors. Instead, he was a 47-year-old handyman from Las Vegas with a YouTube channel called Snakebit MG. His videos were raw desert hikes filmed alone, exploring abandoned mines, wandering miles into the barren lands of Nevada. No music, no editing tricks, just Kenny and the wild. One day, under a video about strange desert experiences, Kenny left a comment that would change everything. Once, while hiking near Nellis Air Force Base, I found a cave shaped like a perfect M. As I approached it, I felt an intense vibration in my chest. The closer I got, the stronger it became. It scared me so much, I turned and ran, but I'm thinking about going back. The comment blew up. Dozens of replies urged him to return and document it. "You have to go back and film it," one person wrote. "What if it's something the government is hiding?" another speculated. At first, Kenny seemed amused by the attention. But soon, it became a challenge he couldn't ignore. A few weeks later, Kenny uploaded a new video, M Cave Hike. It was his first documented attempt to relocate the mysterious cave. With a backpack, a camera, and a pistol strapped to his side, standard gear for desert hikes, he set off into the arid mountains near Nellis Air Force Range, a restricted military zone linked to countless conspiracy theories. As he walked, Kenny narrated calmly, "I'm heading back to where I think I found the M Cave. It was somewhere up here, near the old mines." For hours, he scrambled over rocks, filmed narrow ravines, and panned across empty expanses of desert. No sign of the cave. At the video's end, he admitted defeat. "I didn't find it today. Maybe next time." The comments section exploded. "Don't give up. It's out there. Be careful. This could be dangerous." Kenny replied, "I'll go again. Next time, I'll push further." What none of them knew was that next time would be his last hike. In mid-October 2014, Kenny prepared for another solo trip. He told his girlfriend, Sharon Pilgrim, that he was going back to find the M Cave. "I won't be gone long," he promised. This time, he packed light. A pistol, a small backpack, a camera, and some snacks. He left behind his sleeping gear and larger supplies. To Sharon, this suggested he wasn't planning to camp overnight. Before leaving, he posted another message online. "I'm going back out there. If I don't return, please don't come looking for me." Some took it as a joke. Others weren't so sure. Kenny drove out alone toward the Sheep Mountains, parked his car at a familiar trailhead, and set off on foot. It was the last time anyone saw him. When Kenny didn't return home, Sharon grew concerned. Days passed, no call, no message. She contacted authorities and filed a missing person report. Search and rescue teams were deployed, helicopters scoured the desert, and ground crews followed the likely routes Kenny might have taken. Then a break. Roughly a week into the search, they found Kenny's cell phone propped against a rock near the entrance of an old abandoned mine shaft. No other signs of him, no footprints leading away. His backpack, gun, camera, all missing. The phone's discovery raised disturbing questions. Why would Kenny leave it behind? Did he fall into the mine? Did something or someone force him to abandon it? Rescue teams searched the mine extensively. No body, no clues. The desert seemed to have swallowed him whole. In the weeks that followed, online speculation exploded. Was the M Cave real? Had Kenny stumbled into something forbidden? Had he been silenced? Some believed he faked his disappearance. Others were convinced the government was involved, especially given the area's proximity to Nellis and the infamous Area 51. Sharon tried to quiet the wildest theories. Kenny wasn't suicidal, she told interviewers. He loved exploring, but he wasn't reckless. He wouldn't have faked this. Something happened out there. But what? No new evidence surfaced. Volunteers organized independent searches. They found nothing, no clothing, no gear, no remains. Months turned into years. The only concrete trace of Kenny Veach remained that solitary cell phone, resting like a silent witness at the edge of a forgotten mine. The desert is a place of extremes. blistering days, freezing nights, and a silence so complete it can unnerve even seasoned hikers. Kenny Veach knew this. He had spent years exploring the Nevada wilderness, filming his solitary treks. But this time, the silence felt different. After the search teams found his phone near the mine shaft, hope of a quick resolution faded. Professional rescuers combed the area for days. Volunteers from online forums organized their own expeditions. They examined caves, scoured ravines, and rappelled into shafts. Still nothing. As days turned into weeks, theories multiplied. Some believed Kenny had suffered a fatal accident. Others suggested disorientation or dehydration had led him to wander far from the search zone. Yet many couldn't shake a darker suspicion that he had encountered something he wasn't supposed to. The area where Kenny vanished wasn't just any stretch of desert. It bordered the Nellis Test and Training Range, a massive, highly restricted military installation. Beyond that loomed Area 51, the nexus of American conspiracy lore. Had Kenny crossed an unseen boundary? Had someone intercepted him? Meanwhile, Sharon clung to the possibility that Kenny might still be alive, lost, injured, waiting for help. But as more time passed, the odds grew slimmer. One clue gnawed at everyone. The phone. Why leave it behind? Kenny was an experienced hiker. He knew that in a survival situation, a working phone, even without signal, was a crucial tool. Its flashlight alone could be life-saving in the dark. And yet, it sat abandoned in plain sight. For Sherian, this detail haunted her. Kenny wasn't careless, she later said. He never would have just left that phone unless something made him. The desert gave no answers. The sun rose and set over the empty mountains, and Kenny Veach remained missing, as if the earth itself had swallowed him whole. As the days dragged on, the online world fixated on Kenny's disappearance. His story spread beyond the niche hiking community. Reddit threads dissected every detail. YouTube videos speculated wildly. A lone desert explorer, lured by the mystery of a strange cave, vanished without a trace. The narrative was irresistible. But while strangers on the internet spun theories, those who knew Kenny were left with something far worse: silence. Sherian revisited Kenny's last words, posted just before his final hike. "If I don't return, please don't come looking for me." At first, many dismissed this as typical internet bravado, but now it read like a warning. Some believed it suggested Kenny had planned to vanish intentionally. Others saw it as a grim premonition. Friends and family rejected the idea that he'd staged his disappearance. Kenny wasn't a man chasing fame. His YouTube channel had modest views. He wasn't chasing clicks or internet stardom. He hiked because he loved it. Sherian was adamant. Kenny had no reason to disappear. He had plans, a life here. He wasn't suicidal. But even experienced hikers can fall victim to the desert's hidden dangers. The area where Kenny vanished was unforgiving. Jagged rock formations, sudden drop-offs, rattlesnakes, hidden mine shafts. Without enough water, dehydration could set in within hours. A single misstep could be fatal, yet the phone remained the strangest clue. If Kenny had fallen, why was it found propped neatly by the shaft? If he'd intended to explore the mine, why leave his most essential tool behind? Searchers began considering darker possibilities. Could someone have been following Kenny? Had he unknowingly trespassed into a zone watched by military personnel or private contractors? In that part of Nevada, rumors about black ops and secret tests were part of the local folklore. But for all the speculation, one fact remained: no body, no gear, no final message. Kenny Veach had stepped into the Nevada desert and vanished as if the sand itself had erased him. As weeks turned into months, the official search efforts tapered off. Without new leads, there was little more authorities could do. The desert had swallowed its secret. Kenny's disappearance was now classified as an open but inactive case. No foul play suspected, no new evidence found. But the online obsession only grew stronger. Every frame of Kenny's last M Cave hike video was scrutinized. Viewers mapped out the terrain, comparing rock formations and trail features to satellite images. Amateur sleuths theorized that Kenny had unknowingly filmed the cave's surroundings, that perhaps the M cave itself was visible somewhere in the background. Others weren't convinced the cave had ever existed. They suggested Kenny had fabricated the story to generate views, and then, embarrassed at not finding it again, had simply vanished. Some even speculated he was alive somewhere, hiding to escape the spotlight. Sherian watched these debates with increasing frustration. Kenny wasn't a liar, she insisted. He genuinely believed he'd found something strange out there. She rejected claims that he'd staged his disappearance. He had no history of deceit, no signs of mental instability. But the biggest mystery remained unsolved: the cave itself. Did the M cave really exist? If so, why had no one found it, even after extensive volunteer searches? The desert around Nellis was vast, but it wasn't uncharted. Many hikers knew the area well. Yet despite coordinated efforts, no one ever produced proof of an M-shaped cave. For those who believed Kenny's story, the lack of discovery only deepened the intrigue. Some began speculating that the cave was unnatural, perhaps an entrance to a hidden military installation, or even something more fantastical. In the shadows of Area 51, such ideas found fertile ground. Meanwhile, Sherian was left with only memories and questions that refused to fade. "It's not about conspiracies," she said quietly. "It's about a man I loved who went for a hike and never came back." And in the harsh silence of the Nevada desert, that was the only truth that mattered. As the first winter approached, the chances of finding Kenny alive diminished. The desert nights grew colder. Even a seasoned hiker like Kenny couldn't survive for weeks without proper shelter and supplies. But the desert held its silence. For Kenny's friends and family, the lack of closure was a torment. Sherian, refusing to give up, organized volunteer searches. Dozens of hikers ventured into the canyons and arroyos around the Sheep Mountains. They scanned caves, probed abandoned mine shafts, and combed through the sun-scorched landscape. Still, no trace of Kenny. Rumors swirled online. Some claimed the government had erased evidence of the M cave. Others insisted Kenny had found it and been silenced. A few speculated he had wandered into a military test zone and been caught in something he wasn't meant to see. Yet for seasoned searchers, a simpler explanation seemed more likely. The Nevada desert is vast and deadly. Many hikers overestimate their abilities. A single wrong turn can lead to disaster. But even they struggled to explain the phone. Why had Kenny propped it so deliberately by the mine entrance? If he'd planned to explore the shaft, why not take it with him? If he'd intended to hike further, why abandon it? One theory suggested that Kenny had encountered someone out there, another person, perhaps hostile. In such a case, he might have been forced to leave the phone behind. Another possibility was more tragic, that Kenny had been suffering from the effects of dehydration and heat exhaustion. In such a state, rational thinking can falter. People often behave strangely, discarding essential gear, wandering aimlessly. Yet none of these theories accounted for the eerie precision with which the phone had been placed. Not dropped, not discarded, propped upright, almost as if waiting to be found. For Sherian, this detail refused to fade. Kenny wasn't careless, she repeated. If he left that phone there, something was very wrong. And still, the desert remained silent. No sign of struggle. No trail to follow. Just one man gone, and a mystery that was deepening with every passing day. Months passed. The official search had long been called off, yet the mystery of Kenny Veach refused to fade. Among those who couldn't let it go were members of the online hiking and exploration communities. Groups on Reddit and YouTube formed dedicated threads to dissect the case. Amateur cartographers created detailed maps of the region where Kenny had vanished. Satellite imagery was pored over for signs of unusual terrain, anything that might match the description of an M-shaped cave. Some hikers, driven by curiosity or a desire to bring closure, organized independent search expeditions. They retraced Kenny's steps, following the same trails and venturing into nearby canyons. Over time, these efforts became more methodical. Grid searches were planned. GPS tracks were shared online. Yet none of these groups found the M cave, nor did they find any sign of Kenny Veach. This deepened the sense of unease. How could a man simply disappear? Not a scrap of clothing, not a bone, not a shoe in an area that was now among the most heavily searched patches of desert in Nevada. For some, the lack of evidence became proof of a darker explanation. Stories circulated that Kenny had stumbled upon a military secret, a hidden entrance, a surveillance system, something not meant for civilian eyes. The government, they argued, had ensured he would not return. Others believed Kenny had deliberately vanished. Perhaps, they speculated, he had grown tired of his life and used the M Cave story as a cover to disappear into the wilderness. But those who knew him best rejected this idea. Kenny loved life, Sherian said. He loved the desert, yes, but he also loved our life together. He had no reason to run away. Still, as the first anniversary of Kenny's disappearance approached, no new evidence had surfaced. His YouTube channel remained frozen the comment about the M Cave, now infamous. The phone, recovered near the mine shaft, was the only concrete clue left behind. And in the heat and silence of the Nevada desert, the legend of the M Cave and the man who had vanished chasing it only grew stronger. As the first anniversary of Kenny Veach's disappearance approached, a strange shift occurred. What had begun as a real-world search for a missing man was transforming into something else, a myth, a cautionary tale whispered through the digital void. Kenny's story now lived online. YouTube creators, eager for views, produced slick videos dramatizing his final hike. Paranormal forums teemed with new theories. The M Cave was an interdimensional portal. Kenny had encountered an alien base. The military had covered it all up. Some even speculated he had ascended to a higher plane of existence. For Sherian and those who loved Kenny, this spectacle was agonizing. "This isn't entertainment," she pleaded in an interview. "A real man is missing. Kenny's not a ghost story. He's not a conspiracy. He's a person who didn't come home." But the internet rarely heeds such pleas. Kenny had unknowingly left behind the perfect digital breadcrumb trail, the cryptic comment, the eerie video, the abandoned phone. It was a story too compelling to let go. Offline, the desert remained unchanged. Occasional hikers still searched, driven by curiosity or a sincere desire to find answers. Some documented their expeditions in videos titled "Searching for Kenny Veach," walking the same rocky trails, peering into the same shadowed caves. Yet no one found the M Cave, and no one found Kenny. Some began to wonder, had the cave ever existed? Was it possible that Kenny, in a moment of dehydration or hallucination, had misremembered a natural formation? Or had he imagined it entirely? Others clung to belief. The desert, they argued, is vast beyond comprehension. Caves can be hidden, entrances obscured by rock falls or shifting sands. If the M Cave was real and dangerous, perhaps, that explained why Kenny had vanished. As year 2 approached, one bitter truth remained. For all the speculation, for all the theories and searches, nothing tangible had emerged. The desert had given up no answers. And somewhere, out there, beneath endless sky and stone, the fate of Kenny Veach remained locked in silence. As time passed, the legend of the M Cave hardened into an unsolved riddle, not just for conspiracy theorists, but for hikers and locals who truly knew the desert. Among those drawn in were seasoned explorers who had long roamed the Nevada wilderness. Some viewed the whole affair with skepticism. "That area's been mapped for decades," one experienced hiker wrote. "No one's ever documented an M-shaped cave." But others weren't so quick to dismiss it. They pointed out that Nevada's desert is vast in ways that even satellite maps can't fully capture. Hidden-side canyons, unstable slopes, and entrances masked by shadow or debris. These are real physical obstacles. Even now, new caves and shafts were occasionally found by climbers and spelunkers. Still, none matched Kenny's description. In the absence of hard evidence, debate intensified. Was the cave a misremembered natural feature, Or had Kenny genuinely found something unusual and paid the price for returning? Then there was the unsettling issue of his last online words. "If I don't return, please don't come looking for me." Some now viewed this as a cryptic clue, a deliberate signal that Kenny had stumbled onto something dangerous. Others saw it as foreshadowing from a man who knew the risks of solo desert hiking, a grim acknowledgement of nature's indifference. For Sharian, the phrase was a source of heartbreak. He wrote that because he was proud, she said. He always wanted to do things alone. He didn't want anyone risking their life if something happened to him. And something had. That much was certain. But the nature of that something remained maddeningly elusive. There was no evidence of foul play, but no proof of accident either. No body meant no closure, only a long, slow ache that deepened with every fruitless search. And in the background, Kenny's YouTube comment continued to echo across the internet, a digital ghost forever luring the curious into the unforgiving wild. As the years crept by, the absence of answers began to weigh heavily on those closest to Kenny. Sharian, who had once clung to the hope that Kenny might be found, now faced a quieter, more brutal reality. The man she loved had vanished into the desert, and no one, no expert, no searcher, no hiker had brought her any closer to knowing what had happened. She still received messages from strangers. Some offered genuine sympathy. Others sent wild theories or cryptic claims that they'd seen Kenny alive, wandering the edges of the desert. A few accused her of knowing more than she was saying. "They don't understand," Sharon later said. "I just want the truth. That's all I've ever wanted." But the truth remained out of reach. The official case file on Kenny Veach sat largely unchanged. The file listed no confirmed sightings after his final hike. His car, recovered from the trailhead, held no clues. His abandoned phone was still the last concrete sign of his presence. Meanwhile, the online obsession only deepened. Each new video, each speculative blog post added layers to the myth. Kenny had become an archetype, the lone seeker who vanished. In online forums, some users even began referring to pulling a Kenny shorthand for heading into the wild alone in pursuit of an unsolved mystery. Sharian watched this unfold with growing unease. "It's not a game," she said quietly. "Kenny wasn't playing at being famous. He was a real person. He had a life, and now he's gone." Yet the desert gave no answers. More than 2 years after Kenny vanished, a small group of volunteers conducted another exhaustive search near the original site. They scoured ravines with drones and thermal cameras. They explored long-forgotten mine shafts. They checked caves no wider than a man's shoulders. And once again, nothing. No M cave, no Kenny Veach. And so the searchers returned, their packs heavier with disappointment than with gear. The mountains remained indifferent. The desert wind still whispered over stone. And the question that had haunted so many remained. How does a man, experienced, equipped, determined, vanish without a trace, leaving behind only a mystery that refused to die? By the 3rd year after Kenny's disappearance, the divide between reality and myth had grown painfully wide. Online, the M Cave had become a symbol, a stand-in for all the unknown places lurking at the edge of maps. Kenny's story was shared in countless top 10 unsolved mysteries videos. His name appeared in threads about government conspiracies, missing hikers, even paranormal phenomena. The legend was alive and well. But for those who had known Kenny, the legend felt hollow, a distortion of the man they remembered. Sharian struggled with this constantly. "People talk about Kenny like he's a story," she said. "He wasn't a story. He was a person with hopes, dreams, and people who loved him." She still kept a small collection of Kenny's things, items from their life together before the desert had taken him. Sometimes she would scroll through his old YouTube comments, reading them like fragments of a conversation forever frozen in time. The irony was inescapable. Kenny had never sought fame. He had posted about the M Cave not to become a legend, but because he was a curious man who loved to share what he found. And yet now, his comment, that single spark, had lit a fire no one could extinguish. Meanwhile, New waves of would-be searchers kept arriving in the desert. Some came with cameras, hoping to capture viral content. Others, more sincere, still sought to solve the mystery. One experienced hiker, after weeks of exploring the Sheep Mountains, summed up the frustration many felt. "This is one of the most unforgiving places I've ever searched," he wrote. "You think you've seen every cave, every crevice, and then you turn a corner and find a whole new stretch of uncharted land. But still no M cave. No Kenny, no trace." And the deeper the legend burrowed into public imagination, the more impossible it seemed to untangle truth from fiction. "I don't want Kenny to be a myth," Sherian said softly. "I want him to come home, or at least to know what happened." But in the desert, knowing is the rarest thing of all. As more time passed, a question began to loom larger than all others, one that even Kenny's staunchest defenders were forced to confront. Had the M cave ever existed? It was a question with no easy answer. Kenny was known for his honesty. Friends and family described him as a straight talker, not prone to exaggeration. His videos were simple, unembellished, the work of a man who loved nature, not a storyteller chasing drama. But memory is a fragile thing. The desert can play tricks on even the most seasoned mind. Heat, exhaustion, dehydration, these can warp perceptions, turn shadows into shapes, rocks into doorways. Could Kenny, on that first hike, have seen a natural rock formation that seemed cave-like under the harsh midday sun? Some thought so. Veteran desert hikers pointed out that M-shaped arches and shadows weren't uncommon in Nevada's rocky canyons. Under certain angles of light, a simple overhang could resemble a cave mouth. But others remained convinced. They argued that Kenny's description had been too vivid, the sense of vibration, the sudden physical reaction. Surely, they said, he had encountered something. The problem was simple. Without the cave, the entire mystery changed. If Kenny had imagined the cave, then his final hike, driven by a desire to find it again, might have led him into fatal terrain while chasing a mirage. But if the cave did exist, and if it held something unusual, then what? That possibility continued to haunt searchers. In the years since Kenny vanished, dozens of caves have been explored in the Sheep Mountains. Some led nowhere. Others delved deep underground, only to end in collapsed tunnels or flooded chambers. Yet none fit the description of the M cave. And with each failed expedition, frustration grew. Had the desert hidden its secret forever? Or was the secret simply a trick of memory, magnified by the cold logic of loss? For Sherian, the answer didn't matter anymore. Real or not, it's not about the cave, she said. It's about Kenny, and he's still out there somewhere. But in the endless labyrinth of rock and sand, even that simple hope seemed to be slipping away. With each passing year, the weight of uncertainty grew heavier. For those closest to Kenny, life had become a strange balancing act, trying to move forward, while tethered to a question that refused to fade. Birthdays, holidays, quiet moments, all carried the same unspoken ache. What happened to him? Sherian struggled the most. Some days she found strength in routine, in small joys. Other days, the loss hit her like a wave. You wake up and think, maybe today someone will call with news, she said. And then the day ends and there's nothing, just silence. The silence was the hardest part. If Kenny had perished in a known accident, if his body had been found, there would be grief, yes, but also closure. Instead, there was only a void. No trail, no remains, no definitive answer. Even experienced searchers admitted their limits. The desert doesn't always give up its secrets, one wrote after another fruitless expedition. There are places out here where a man could disappear forever. And the M cave? The longer it remained undiscovered, the more it seemed to slip into legend. Skeptics grew louder, calling it a myth born of dehydration or misperception. Believers doubled down, convinced that something or someone was deliberately keeping its location hidden. Yet amid the noise, one truth remained clear. A man had vanished. A man with family, with friends, with a life that had been interrupted mid-sentence. Sharian sometimes revisited Kenny's old videos, listening to his calm voice echo across lonely trails. "Look at this view," he'd say. "Out here, you feel free." Freedom, but at what cost? As the 5th anniversary approached, the reality grew starker. The odds of finding Kenny, alive or otherwise, had grown vanishingly small. The desert was vast, and time was a relentless eraser. Yet Sharian held to one hope: that someone, someday, might stumble upon a clue, a scrap of clothing, a piece of gear, some trace to say he was here. Until then, the desert remained silent. And Kenny Veach remained missing, a man lost not only to the wilderness, but to a mystery that deepened with every year. With time, even the most determined searchers began to step back. Many who had spent months mapping trails, crawling through narrow shafts, and enduring the harsh Nevada sun, finally admitted a bitter truth: the desert might never yield its secret. "You think effort will be rewarded?" One volunteer wrote after his final search. "You believe that if you just look long enough, hard enough, you'll find something. But sometimes there is nothing to find." For Sharian, this was the hardest truth of all. Not the conspiracy theories, not the online noise, but the creeping realization that Kenny's trail might truly be gone. She had clung for years to the hope that someone would call, that some shred of evidence would surface. A backpack, a shoe, a scrap of paper, anything. But no call came. And as the anniversaries passed, fewer new search parties ventured into the Sheep Mountains. The frenzy of online attention faded. Other mysteries took its place in the endless churn of internet curiosity. Yet for those who loved Kenny, the mystery remained raw. Sharian sometimes drove out to the edge of the desert and sat alone beneath the stars. "I talk to him," she admitted in a rare interview. "I tell him we haven't forgotten you. We're still looking." But deep down, she knew the truth. No one was really searching anymore. The desert, in its vast indifference, had reclaimed the man who once loved to roam its edges. And the M Cave, real or imagined, had claimed another legend. For some, this was a bitter ending. For others, it was simply the way of the wild. "People don't like to accept that the earth is bigger than us," one old prospector said. But sometimes it is, and sometimes it keeps what it takes. Still, a few flickers of hope remained. New hikers occasionally stumbled across the story and vowed to look again. A new satellite image would surface. A fresh discussion thread would spark renewed curiosity. But for Sharian, the search had changed. "I'm not chasing the cave anymore," she said softly. "I just want to bring Kenny home. That's all I ever wanted." And in the silent sprawl of the Nevada desert, that simple hope still waited patient as the stones. In the years that followed, Kenny Veach's story became something of a quiet legend among those who knew the desert. Experienced hikers would mention his name in hushed tones before setting out alone. "Stay safe. Don't pull a Kenny," they'd say, half in jest, half in warning. His disappearance had become a cautionary tale, a reminder that even the most seasoned explorers could vanish beneath the weight of heat, distance, and isolation. But for those who had known Kenny, the story remained deeply personal. Sharian still refused to give in to despair. "I can't say goodbye if I don't know what happened," she said. She kept in touch with a few of the hikers who had searched tirelessly. Occasionally, one would message her, "Heading out again this weekend, I'll check that new cave I heard about." But each search ended the same way, empty-handed. And as time passed, the deeper questions remained unresolved. Why had Kenny returned to the desert that day with so little gear? Why had he left his phone so deliberately at the mineshaft entrance? Had the M Cave been real, or a mirage born of heat and exhaustion? Had he stumbled across something he shouldn't have? Or had the simplest answer been the right one all along, that the desert, vast and unforgiving, had claimed another life? For many, this was the hardest truth to accept. The mind craves answers, neat conclusions. But nature offers no such comfort. "The desert doesn't care about our questions," one searcher said. It's bigger than our stories. It always was. And so the story of Kenny Veach remained suspended, not solved, not closed, not fully believed, nor fully dismissed. For the world, it became another mystery on an endless list. But for Sharian, for Kenny's family, it was something else entirely. I think about him every day, she said. Not because of the cave, because I loved him, and he's still out there somewhere. And beneath the unblinking sun, the Nevada desert held its silence vast, patient, unmoved. As more time passed, the weight of the unknown settled into the lives of those left behind. The world had moved on. Online, Kenny's story had become just another chapter in the endless scroll of unsolved mysteries. Occasionally, a new video or article would breathe brief life into the tale, drawing fresh eyes and fresh speculation. But for the people who had loved Kenny, there was no story. There was only absence. Sharian often reflected on the strange dual life the mystery had taken on. It's so strange, she said. There are thousands of people out there who know Kenny's name, who talk about the M Cave like it's some kind of game. But they never knew him. They didn't see the man who made me laugh, who loved to hike not to get famous, but because it made him feel alive. That man, the real Kenny Veach, was the one she still mourned. Friends and family quietly accepted that the odds of finding him had grown impossibly slim. The Nevada desert is a place where the earth itself shifts over time. Wind, sand, rockfall, they erase footprints and swallow evidence. Even a trained search dog could be rendered useless against nature's vast, shifting canvas. And yet, despite the silence, hope flickered. Sharian still left a light on, still answered emails from hikers and searchers, still listened when someone said, "I think I found something." It never got easier. Each burst of hope risked reopening the same wound. "But I can't stop," she admitted. "As long as there's a chance, even the smallest one, I have to believe that someone might find him, that we might finally know." And so the years rolled on. The legend of the M Cave remained. The desert remained. And the man who had once walked boldly into its sun-baked canyons remained missing, a life paused mid-sentence, waiting for an ending that may never come. For the rest of the world, it was an unsolved mystery. For Sharian, it was something far simpler and far harder. "It's not about the cave," she said softly. "It's about Kenny. That's all it's ever been about." Today, Kenny Veach's name still drifts through the endless currents of the internet, whispered in forums, replayed in YouTube documentaries, analyzed in grainy video clips. But behind the legend, the questions remain raw and unanswered. Did the M Cave exist? Did Kenny truly find something that day, something beyond understanding or beyond explanation? Or did the desert, vast and indifferent, simply claim another solitary traveler in its endless embrace? No one can say. The only certainty is this. On a bright October morning in 2014, Kenny Veach walked alone into the Nevada wilderness, and the world has not seen him since. And in the years that followed, something else became clear, something quieter than any conspiracy theory, more powerful than any viral video. The story wasn't about a cave. It wasn't about Area 51 or hidden military secrets. It wasn't about the mysteries of the desert. It was about a man curious, brave, flawed, human. A man who loved the wild places of the earth, who shared that love with others, and who vanished, chasing the wonder that drew him there in the first place. "I know people will always talk about the M Cave," Sharian said. "But when I think about Kenny, I don't think about the cave. I think about him sitting under the stars, smiling. I think about the man who loved life, who loved me, and who should have come home. Perhaps, in the end, that is the true heart of the mystery. Not what Kenny might have found, but what was lost when he disappeared." And so the Nevada desert remains vast and silent. The stones, remember, even if they do not speak. Somewhere among them, a story ended and another began. One that will echo unanswered for as long as there are those who still look to the wild with wonder and with longing.